We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by Line Movement. Time to walk through some Week 13 matchups, talking through the three most interesting games of the week from a fantasy perspective, and then we are going to give our picks against the spread for each. And I say our because I'm not alone. Per usual, our weekly guest on the Joe Holka Show, author of the worksheet at sharpfootballanalysis.com, Rich Hribar. How was your Week 12, my man?
Oh, week 12 was great. Yeah, absolutely. It was real good. We're in December, so, Christmas is coming. We got about 2 feet of snow yesterday. So
Nice.
that was pretty awesome. The kids were off of school. So just one more wrench in my weekly, kind of game carving out work, especially with this week with, there's a game going on in 20 minutes,
So weird,
which
man.
is crazy,
So
which
weird.
is the weirdest thing ever. But 2020, next week will be weird too, with no buys and a Tuesday game. But we're going to make it through. The NFL is trudging along, so we're along for the ride.
Reeves, your video looks better every time I see you, man. I'm loving it right now. Look at this lighting, ladies and gentlemen. This guy
The sun
is
is
the
also
real
actually
deal.
out.
What's that?
So the sun is actually also out
Yeah.
in Northeast Ohio, which may be for the first time in like 2 weeks. Everyone's been watching Browns home games for like a month, thinking like, there's no way I'm ever going to live there. And the sun is actually out today.
Good stuff. Yeah, it's like in Minnesota right now, it's very sunny out, but it's also very cold, which is weird to me being from Arizona. When it's sunny, it's warm. Not like that here at all. So Reeves, let's jump into it. 3 games to talk through. The first one that we're going to talk about, Jacksonville at Minnesota, 52.5 over under at blitzbet.eu right now. The Vikings are a minus 10.5 point home favorite. Second highest total on the main slate overall. So what are your initial thoughts on this one, Reeves?
Yeah, I always try to coax you into Minnesota games, and you always kind of just shoot back, paste stuff at me. But I mean, there's a reason I always bring them up for a couple reasons. One, their games are just going over like they're bonkers. Every game in Minnesota has gone over the game total so far this year, with 61.5 on average combined points. We had a little help last week with 2 Jeremy Chin touchdowns, with the over got there, but also I feel it's relevant to keep bringing up the Vikings because now that Dalvin Cook has been regularly the highest priced running back, we keep bringing up this passing game when they're in good spots because they're consistently high leverage plays because everyone wants to jam Dalvin Cook in. He's a huge home favorite again. He's against a bad Jaguars run defense that's still not going to have Josh Allen. But then we look at this pass offense, and they're in another great spot. I mean, the Jaguars are 31st in EPA passing allowed. They've allowed 18.3 passing points per game. They've allowed multiple touchdown passes in 5 straight games. And we just see they get no pressure on the quarterback, and they've got all these injuries on the back end. You look at their cornerback room. CJ Henderson's on IR. We don't know if Sidney Jones is going to come back. DJ Hayden is out. So Kirk Cousins, no one likes playing Kirk Cousins because they can always throw 20 passes, but the volume has been there recently. He's been a QB1 scorer in 3 of his past 4 games, 4 of his past 6. Adam Thielen's coming back. Even by missing last week, Adam Thielen still leads the league in end zone targets with 15. The Jaguars are 29th in fantasy points allowed per target to opposing wide receivers. They're 31st in yards per target allowed to wide receivers. And you look at these past 4 games, they've allowed 6 top 20 scoring wide receivers. 12-8, 189-1 to the Browns, 25-221-1 to the Steelers wideouts, 12-215-2 to the Packers wideouts, 11-204-2 to the Houston wideouts over that same span. And then Justin Jefferson is just kind of the rookie de jour of choice. He leads the NFL in yards per team pass attempt, which is always one of my favorite stats. It's real sticky year over year as well, and a real signal for guys that are going to break out if you like that. High leverage. Everyone's played Dalvin Cook. The Minnesota passing game is in play, and their defense is bad. I mean, you look at Mike Glennon, he was capable last week. We do have to see if DJ Shark's going to play this week, but if he does, I mean, the Minnesota has allowed the most opposing touchdowns to opposing wide receiver ones on the season in 12. So, I mean, we can always say, like, well, who is the Jaguars' real wide receiver one? When he plays, I mean, it is DJ Shark if you look at the target numbers, but we got a 6'5" guy in Colin Johnson who kind of broke out last week. Keelan Cole had probably 2 walk-in touchdowns that Mike Glennon missed him on. And obviously James Robinson. I mean, think about this. James Robinson has every carry outside of 7 out of running backs in Jacksonville.
It's insane. He's expensive now. They finally priced him up. Finally.
Yeah, he's on pace to shatter Christian McCaffrey's, record that he set last year for percentage of running back carries. And the guy is just tried and true. We've seen 2 weeks ago when they play Steelers as 10-point home dogs, and he still hits for 100 yards of scrimmage again in that spot. The guy is he consistently gets there every week, and he doesn't come off the field. So, I mean, there's some interesting pieces in this game. It's a really weird slate, and we've picked out 3 games that are as intriguing as they get on this slate. Yeah, I feel like you start here and you go with a little leverage spot with the Vikings passing game again.
I like this. I like this take, Reeves, because I think one thing that I'm trying to get a little bit better about is I've seen some high stakes guys really just target some of these condensed offenses, but I think the ones that are actually like really important to kind of focus on is ones that we can just not be interested in the quarterback, but still be very interested in like the mini stack equity that we get from some of these types of situations in the passing game where we know exactly where the ball is going. So whether you end up on like a skinny stack with a rushing quarterback that's not like a main game stack, or maybe you just play one of these guys that's a little bit cheaper in order to get up to some of these pieces and these offenses that are much more condensed. So I like that quite a bit. In terms of the total and the side of this game, it looks like the sharps overall are on Minnesota early, 86% of the money, only 59% of the betting tickets so far, 91% of the money currently on the under in this game as well. So Reeves, I think I'm going to be on the Minnesota side of this one, even though it's a minus 10.5 point line. But what are you thinking in terms of the side on this one?
Yeah, I mean, just from a general trend stance, I mean, Mike Zimmer is, since he's been hired by Minnesota, is the league's best coach against the spread in non-conference games, 19-8 against the spread. And since 2013, the Jaguars are 5-25 in these spots against the spread as well. It's the worst in the NFL by a wide margin. So, I mean, it's a lot of points to lay, and the Jaguars have punched back on a few teams. I do like the Minnesota side as well. I like the over a little bit more here. Like I said, I think the Jaguars are capable of scoring points in this game, and they've kind of shown that they can. And Minnesota just doesn't pressure their quarterback. So, I mean, my favorite bet would be the over, but I would lean Minnesota if you're twist my arm on the side based on that, long going trend with Zimmer.
Awesome. Game number 2, Cleveland at Tennessee. It's a 53.5 point over under. The Titans are minus 5.5 point home favorites in this one per blitzbet.eu. It is the highest total on the main slate. So what are your thoughts on this one, Reeves?
I mean, when you reached out and we kind of kicked the games back, I just said I almost did a double take. The Cleveland Tennessee game is the highest game. If I'd have brought that up to you before the season, hey, when we get to week 13, Browns Titans gonna have the highest total, you'd be like, what?
No
and even
way,
when you
man.
look at this, even when you think about this, kind of objectively, like what both these teams want to do, they're the Spider-Man meme. You say, well, how are they going to score points? They all just want to hand the ball off. I mean, they're number 1 and number 2 in teams of 12 personnel run. Tennessee runs the ball on 67% of their first down plays outside the fourth quarter. It's the highest in the league. Cleveland is third at 62%. The Browns lead the league in yardage gained and carries of 10 or more yards. The Titans are third. Derrick Henry leads the league in yardage on those carries. Nick Chubb is third. 21% of Nick Chubb's yardage comes on carries of 10 or more yards. They're the Spider-Man meme. It's like, so how do we get there? Well, you and I have been, I tried this a few times with you, and then it coaxed bad weather into Cleveland.
Sure.
I'm saying, well, the Browns defense is horrible. Like they're on a per drive basis, they're one of the worst teams in the NFL, but they kept catching games where it was just inclement weather and none of these games could pop. So, I mean, that's why this total, I was hoping there was going to be no adjustment. Because the Titans don't turn the ball over. They actually have the lowest turnover rate per drive in the NFL. So you're not going to get a lot of, plays where the Browns are forcing them off the field and getting turnovers. The question about this game, though, as it pertains to DFS, is all these running backs are expensive and none of them catch the football. Mm-hmm. And when you look at this outside of paying for Dalvin Cook, where do we go? If you're not going to pay that top dollar for Dalvin Cook, and if you didn't pay it last week, you were rewarded. If you played to Derrick Henry, if you played to Nick Chubb, you were rewarded last week. But these guys are expensive. They don't catch the football. Nick Chubb actually had 32 receiving yards last week, which kind of he had 17 yards on the season coming into that. But you look at Nick Chubb, this guy is just hyper efficient, even for not catching the football. We don't love yards per carry, but yards per carry matters as it pertains to Nick Chubb, like it did for Jamal Charles. His lowest yards per carry in a game this season is 5.6 yards per touch in the run game, which is really crazy. He just breaks off all these long runs. He gets dominant. We're not a big body blows team, but when you look at this his fourth quarter stats, it's insane. He's averaging 12.6 yards per carry in fourth quarter carries. Even if you remove his 59 and 54 yard runs in those settings, he's averaging 8.2 yards per carry in the fourth quarter, which is just insane. His return has been kind of a thorn for Kareem Hunt. I know Kareem Hunt's got there in terms of some raw, totals. But Kareem Hunt has only been inside the top 30 running back scorers at his position now in 2 of his past 6 games. You just not the overall volume is kind of a problem. He's just not really getting there overall in terms of points. So he's kind of sketchy to kind of glom onto. But on the other side of this too, we have Baker Mayfield in a spot that offers leverage as well, because everyone's going to look and say, well, when Nick Chubb got these points last week, we've been playing Derrick Henry all year. People have, not you and I, but people have been rewarded for playing Derrick Henry. But Baker Mayfield, in these games where he doesn't face teams that can't pressure the quarterback, and Tennessee is 31st in the league in pressure rate in the NFL, he's averaging 9.7 yards per attempt in the 3 matchups he's faced against bottom 5 teams in pressure rate, and last week was one of those. So he does offer a little bit of upside, and we've seen that kind of trickle down to Jarvis Landry. Remember, like I said, we haven't seen the Browns play a good weather game until last week since they lost Odell Beckham.
It's true.
And Jarvis Landry's target shares have been 44%, 25%, 9% in the Eagles game, which gives us a little bit of pause, been 38% last week. So, I mean, he's the guy that they've turned to as the lead wide receiver with Odell Beckham out. Tennessee is a team that we've targeted, for wide receiver play this season as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of plays in this game. A.J. Brown, obviously, is kind of another one of these weird players that we just have to kind of accept just breaks the system. Since returning in week 5, he's 13th in targets among wide receivers, 21st in receptions, but he's 6th in yardage, and he's 3rd in touchdown receptions over that span. He hasn't had more than 4 catches in a game since week 6. But he scored a touchdown in 7 of his past 8 games. He's just one of these guys I think we have to accept as one of these guys that just doesn't adhere to the laws of, kind of regression, or in terms of, coming back from efficiency. The Browns aren't going to have Denzel Ward. Kevin Johnson is not really an answer at cornerback. So, I mean, we got to look towards A.J. Brown, again, being in a good spot.
Interesting game overall, Reeves. I think that one thing, like, people, I think are getting a little bit of a false sense of security in some ways with these running backs that are very priced up, that don't catch passes. I've actually probably gotten close to even on Derrick Henry now after being on him in some of these weeks, which is nice. But Nick Chubb, that price point, Derrick Henry, like $300 away from Dalvin Cook. That's a tough one for me, especially when you can just move down a little bit to like the Austin Eckler range at 7,100, or just kind of get some cheaper volume, lower upside from a guy like David Montgomery for like 5,500. So interesting game, I think, if we're going to be paying up for running backs overall. From a betting perspective, the sharps appear to be on Tennessee, at least early, 83% of the money, only 62% of the betting tickets. So I would agree with that. I do like the Tennessee side in this game overall. Looks like some early sharp action on the over as well, Reeves. So I would assume that you're probably on that side as well.
Yeah, I mean, Cleveland has not covered. They've covered just one spread on the road in their past 11 games. That was the Dallas game earlier in the season. And, I think the best bet here is Titans team total. I think it was floating around 24. I think it's gone up a little bit since then. But I think Titans team total is the best bet to make. And if you're twisting my arm, like I said, if you're forcing me to just pick a lean, I would lean Titans like square.
Awesome. Game number 3, Indy at Houston. It's a 51-point over-under. Texans are 3-point home dogs in this one per blitzbet.eu. Third highest total on the main slate. Let's rip through this one, Reeves. We're going to do our best to get you out of here on time, but who knows?
It's always my fault. Don't take any of the blame.
It is not. It is definitely not. We both are bad.
But I mean, this game is interesting because we want to talk about the Deshaun Watson fallout. And when I was picking a game, I was just trying to think of something really good to talk about as it pertains to DFS this week. Yeah. And we've got Deshaun Watson now losing Will Fuller, right? So Deshaun Watson right now, as it fell last week, with Joshua Kelly getting a touchdown, Deshaun Watson now has accounted for 86.7% of the Houston touchdowns. That is the highest rate among quarterbacks in the league. He leads the league now in yards per completion at 12.8 yards. But a big part of that was having, this resurgence of Will Fuller, a guy that has been just electric so far in the season. In 16 starts without Will Fuller in his career, Watson has averaged 53.1 fewer passing yards, 1.4 fewer yards per pass attempt, as opposed to when Fuller's out there. Now, keep in mind, those 16 games came with DeAndre Hopkins also on the field. So losing Will Fuller, you still had an alpha in DeAndre Hopkins. So now our sample, which was already 53 yards, is a big deal. 1.5 yards per pass attempt is a big deal with even having a guy DeAndre Hopkins field. Now we've got Brandon Cooks, kind of a guy I think the NFL is kind of not really considered a true wide receiver one either. It's going to have to really carry the tide of this passing game. The one benefit for Watson is he is averaging 4.2 rushing points per game over his past 7 games. We're going to need him to run a lot more, I think, to really start hitting his ceiling again. Brandon Cooks, Like I said, not a guy that the NFL is really. A couple teams have tried it with him as their wide receiver one, and no one's loved it. But he's forced in this role now. He does get the biggest bump because he's the guy that's actually good. You know, he's the one guy that's actually given us like a sample of good production that we can
that's
actually
important
play.
at wide receiver, being actually good. Yeah.
Being good is actually important. But he's had double-digit PPR points in 6 of his past 7 games. He has 24% of the team targets, so it's hard to see him like really going bonkers in terms of target share and getting a lot of these targets. He's already getting 24%. But he's the one guy I would say who gets the biggest bump. Obviously, as it pertains to DFS this week, we've got Kiki QT now on DraftKings at 3,500. He already was in line because we lose Randall Cobb and he plays Randall Cobb's role. I want to make sure not everyone goes crazy with this Will Fuller exit because he doesn't play Will Fuller's position. You know, they're probably going to elevate. They elevated Steven Mitchell off the practice squad. A lot of people are talking about Isaiah Coulter, who has not been active for a game this season, a rookie out of Rhode Island. But those latter two guys, like we have to guess on those guys. And don't remember, the Colts play zone defense at one of the highest rates in the league. Targeting them for deep balls has just not been fruitful all season. They're one of the best defenses in terms of defending balls further than 15 yards downfield. And if you look at Kiki QT, that does have some symmetry to where he plays in the slot. You know, getting some of those targets. And he's had, since Matt Eberflus has been in Indianapolis, Kiki QT has 2 11-catch games against the Colts. You know, granted, that's in a different offensive, climate, but he does have those on his resume against the high zone team. So at 3,500, he's probably going to be a tough guy to completely avoid. And if you bust, you're not really that, extreme about. And then if you want to really get cute, play Jordan Akins. He dropped 2 touchdowns last week, but no one's really going that route.
Interesting price point for Cooks too. He's 5,600, kind of around that same range as like Robert Woods, who I know a lot of people are going to be on against Arizona this week. I kind of like that mid-range at wide receiver overall. So we'll see if I get there with Cooks. I agree that it's not really a big role change for him in particular, especially with Kiki not playing the same position. So we'll see. It's interesting to see how this is going to kind of all shake out. In terms of the betting side, I do like Indy in this one quite a bit. 92% of the money, only 69% of the betting tickets so far. One of the things that I always like to at least touch on this time of the year, these divisional game unders in terms of trends almost always seem to be plus EV bets this time of the year. So I guess that would be my only pushback on this game completely shooting out. But what side do you like, Reeves?
Yeah, I like the Colts as well. I mean, 4-1 against the spread against Deshaun Watson. I think they're just a better team right now as well. I think the Texans, have beaten a few bad teams. Like they've beaten the Jaguars twice and the Lions, teams that aren't impressive. I think the Colts aren't who they were last week. Missing all those players defensively due to COVID IR. DeForest Buckner was a big loss, and they just got trampled in the run game. I think they bounced back this week. I also think Jonathan Taylor's a pretty intriguing play in this game as well, but I was against the clock there.
That's a tough one, man. That we could do an entire show on, I guess, his performance this year in 2020. So, Rich Hribar, everyone, make sure you follow him on Twitter. He's at Lord Reeves. Let the people know where else they can find you throughout the week, man.
Yeah, sharpfootballanalysis.com. You find all my work there, the worksheet. This is the last week with a bye week, so of getting to the playoff push. Pre-snap motion with Chad Scott podcast, Sharp Angles with Dan Pizzuta and Cleve TA, and of course every Wednesday 3:15 Joe Holka Show. Not only week during a game.
Love it, man. I love the commitment. I appreciate you doing this for us, man. Have a great week 13. Talk to you soon.
All right, guys.
Rich Hribar, always a good time talking football with Rich. There's a lot of stuff going on, so I appreciate everyone in the chat right now that is with us. Obviously, we have some games in the middle of a Wednesday, which just seems still crazy overall. Let me know in the comments, guys, what you guys think of adding a little bit of a bets against the spread angle to that segment overall. Obviously, that's something that Rich does extremely profitably as well, so kind of want to start picking his brain a little bit more on sides. So one thing that I do want to touch on quickly before we get out of here, guys, is the Patreon. It's something that we've been talking about over the last few weeks and really been building up overall. It's $1 per month, 25 cents per week, and you get access to our premium Discord chat community, fantasy football, DFS, sports betting, a lot of great conversation going on over there each and every week, each and every day. So what's happening right now in the chat, all you guys are going back and forth about a lot of sharp topics related to all these things. Let's do it off stream as well, guys. We do have an NFL Red Zone stream room in there. We can kind of hang out as a community, watch the games together, sweat the games, and then an exclusive 15 to 30 minute live stream for myself that is not on YouTube. It's only for the Patreons in Discord. One thing that's really cool about we're doing this DraftKings tournament every week. We've been giving away a $30 Amazon gift card. What's different this week is for every rating and review that I get on Apple Podcasts throughout the week, I'm going to add $1 to the prize pool. So we'll see where that's at. I believe when I looked at it earlier today, the prize pool is already up over like $35. So that'll be really cool overall. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this segment with Reeves. Toss a like on this video. If you're here for the first time, consider subscribing. Would love to see it overall. I guess this community continue to grow. Make sure you hit that notification bell, all that good stuff. And I'll talk to you guys on the next video.